Hello everyone, in today's video I'm going to explain the short story B.Wordsworth written by V.S.Naipaul set in Trinidad, which is undergoing several changes and development after attaining independence. B.Wordsworth is taken from Naipaul's collection of short stories titled Miguel Street. This story is narrated in the first person through a boy-child's perspective. B.Wordsworth focuses on the life of its protagonist, a failed poet who claims his kinship with the famous English poet William Wordsworth. He is B. Wordsworth, Black Wordsworth. Significance of the title. Prepare an answer on the appropriateness of the title. The title of the story B. Wordsworth is appropriate and it catches the attention of the reader. The reader would wonder what a Caribbean novelist has written about an English poet. Those who are familiar with the romantic poet Wordsworth will have their curiosity aroused as to what the B before Wordsworth stands for. It arouses our interest as to who this B. Wordsworth is, as we have heard only of William Wordsworth. Like the great poet B. Wordsworth is also a poet, though a failed one. Throughout the story, he is thus the center of interest. Now, this story also focuses on the relationship between the boy-child, the narrator, and the failed poet B. Wordsworth. The two share a very easygoing relationship, and the child seems to instinctively understand and empathize with the poet. And what are the themes highlighted in the story? The story revolves around the themes of number 1, solitude, alienation, admiration, love for nature, the role of the artist in the society, and as discussed, there is the theme of friendship between the boy-child and the narrator. We will now start the easy explanation of the story. First and foremost, the story is told by an unnamed child narrator who lives in Miguel Street. 3 beggars called punctually every day at the hospitable houses in Miguel Street. What is the meaning of hospitable? Welcoming, generous. At about 10, an Indian came in his dhoti and white jacket, and we poured, the narrator and his mother, we poured a tin of rice into the sack he carried on his back. At 12, an old woman smoking a pipe came and she got a cent. At 2, a blind man led by a boy called for his penny. Sometimes we had a row. One day a man called and said he was hungry. We gave him a meal. He asked for a cigarette and wouldn't go until we had lit it for him. That man never came again. What is the meaning of the word rogue? Rogue is scoundrel. Here, the narrator's house is daily frequented by 3 beggars. Now learn who the 3 beggars are. A dhoti-clad Indian at 10, a woman smoking pipe at 12, and a blind man led by a boy at 2. So then we find that the strangest caller is a smartly dressed person who comes at about 4 o'clock one afternoon wishing to watch the narrator's bees. Thus we are introduced to the man of the story, the protagonist B. Wordsworth. Here it is. The strangest caller came one afternoon at about 4 o'clock. I had come back from school and was in my home clothes. The man said to me, "Sonny, may I come inside your yard, Sonny?" What is it? He calls him. The strange man calls the narrator Sonny out of affection and love. He was a small man, description of B. Wordsworth, and he was tidily dressed. He wore a hat, a white shirt and black trousers. I asked, "What do you want?" He said, "I want to watch your bees." This is a strange request. We had 4 small gru palm trees and they were full of uninvited bees. What are gru palm tree? A species of palm tree native to tropical regions of the Americas. I ran up the steps and shouted, "Ma, it have a man outside here. He say he want to watch the bees." My mother came out, looked at the man and asked in an unfriendly way, "What do you want?" What does this suggest? The narrator's mother is quite suspicious of the man and gives him the cold shoulder. "What do you want?" The man said, "I want to watch your bees." He had just one request. He wanted to watch the bees. His English was so good, it didn't sound natural, and I could see my mother was worried. In Trinidad, the black natives live with the whites who once ruled them. Most of the black natives are illiterate, uncouth and rough. They speak broken English. B. Wordsworth, that is Black Wordsworth, who is tidily dressed and who speaks flawless English, arouses suspicion and anxiety in the mind of the boy's mother. The setting is important as it explains why characters behave in particular manners and how they are influenced by their culture, history and politics. The setting, that is Trinidad in contemporary times, is thus important. Moreover, as the perspective of the story is that of a small boy, the language of the story is simple and straightforward. The boy and his mother use ungrammatical English while the poet uses standard English. She said to me, "Stay here and watch him while he watched the bees." She instructs the narrator to watch the man while he watches the bees, and then the two end up watching the bees together, squatting under a palm tree for about an hour. The man said, "Thank you, madam. You have done a good deed today." He spoke very slowly and very correctly. Again, use of language, as though every word was costing him money. There is a difference as far as the language is concerned. We watched the bees, this man and I, for about an hour, squatting near the palm trees, squatting, crouching and sitting on one's heels. The man said, "I like watching bees, Sonny." Again, out of affection and love, "Do you like watching bees?" I said, "I ain't have the time." He shook his head sadly. He said, "That's what I do. I just watch. I can watch ants for days. Have you ever watched ants and scorpions and centipedes and congories? Have you watched those?" What are centipedes? Multi-legged anthropods. I shook my head. I said, "What do you do, mister?" He got up and said, "I am a poet." I said, "A good poet?" He said, "The greatest in the world." "What your name's, mister?" "B. Wordsworth." B for Bill. Black Wordsworth. Black. White Wordsworth was my brother. We share one heart. I can watch a small flower like the morning glory and cry. The little boy is intrigued by the man's appearance and seeks to know him better. The man's introduction about himself is an example of hyperbole, and you all know what hyperbole is. It's for the sake of emphasis. The exaggeration is for the sake of emphasis. Read again. He got up and said, "I am a poet." I said, "A good poet." He said, "The greatest in the world." This is the hyperbole. He tells the boy that the B in his name stands for black and that White Wordsworth was his brother. This reference to the British romantic poet William Wordsworth is significant. I said, "Why you does cry? He is curious. Curiosity is another theme of this story, B. Wordsworth. We will discuss the themes in detail later while discussing the questions and answers. The narrator recalls his boyhood days. He remembers how his house, famous for its hospitality, used to be visited by a number of persons for food and money. Why, boy? Why? You will know when you grow up. So he is a boy, and when he will grow up, he will be a poet. You are a poet too, you know. And when you are a poet, you can cry for everything. Throughout this story, the writer wants to convey that poetry has no value in the contemporary world. Poetry is not something that can provide you sustenance. The writer also conveys the fact that the world of nature is fast depleting in urban areas. I couldn't laugh. He said, "You like your mother? When she not beating me?" What do you think? What is the relationship between the boy and his mother? Think for a while. He pulled out a printed sheet from his hip pocket and said, "On this paper is the greatest poem about mothers, and I'm going to sell it to you at a bargain price for 4 cents. Wordsworth then tries to sell a poem to the kid for 4 cents, only to end up getting chased by his mother. I went inside and I said, "Ma, you want to buy a poetry for 4 cents? My mother said, "Tell that blasted man to haul his tail away from my yard. You hear?" I said to B. Wordsworth, "My mother say she ain't have 4 cents. B. Wordsworth said, "It is the poet's tragedy, the plight of a failed poet." And what is the meaning of the word blasted? Blasted means damned, used to express annoyance. Haul, pull or drag with effort or force. Tail, a person's buttocks. And he put the paper back in his pocket, disappointed. He didn't seem to mind. He is used to such behavior. I said, "It's a funny way to go around selling poetry like that. Only Calypsonians do that sort of thing. A lot of people does buy." He said, "No one has yet bought a single copy." He calmly accepts the unappreciative response as the poet's tragedy and doesn't seem to mind it at all. Perhaps he has been through such rejections earlier as well. I said, "Okay, but why you does keep on going round then?" He said, "In this way I watch many things. As all poets do, they observe. And I always hope to meet poets." I said, "You really think I is a poet? You are as good as me." He said, "And when B. Wordsworth left, I prayed I would see him again." What is the significance of this line? Although the mother is suspicious, the boy has developed a liking for B. Wordsworth, and from here the relationship will start blossoming. About a week later, coming back from school one afternoon, I met him at the corner of Miguel Street. This is the second meeting. This was the first meeting, and now this is the second meeting. He said, "I have been waiting for you for a long time." I said, "You sell any poetry yet?" So he is curious. He shook his head. He said, "In my yard, I have the best mango tree in Port of Spain, and now the mangoes are ripe and red and very sweet and juicy. I have waited here for you to tell you this and to invite you to come and eat some of my mangoes." A week later, the narrator meets B. Wordsworth at the corner of Miguel Street. He hasn't sold any poems yet, but invites the narrator to his home in Alberto Street to feast on mangoes which have become red, ripe and juicy. The two head for B. Wordsworth's one-roomed hut, which looks rather wild, surrounded by a mango, a coconut and a plum tree. Let us read. He lived in Alberto Street in a one-roomed hut placed right in the center of the lot. The yard seemed all green. There was a big mango tree, there was a coconut tree, and there was a plum tree. The place looked wild, as though it wasn't in the city at all. You couldn't see all the big concrete houses in the street. Again, this is important. The symbolism, the concrete construction, the concrete structures, and in the midst of that we have the house of B. Wordsworth. We will discuss this later. The house of B. Wordsworth. He was right. The mangoes were sweet and juicy. I ate about 6 and the yellow mango juice ran down my arms to my elbows and down my mouth to my chin, and my shirt was stained. The narrator hogs down 6 mangoes and ends up staining his shirt with the mango juice, and he gets thrashed by his mother on reaching home and runs away to B. Wordsworth's house. My mother said when I got home, "Where you was? You think you is a man now, you have grown up and could go all over the place? Go, cut a whip for me." She bet him rather badly, and I ran out of the house swearing that I would never come back. I went to B. Wordsworth's house. I was so angry, my nose was bleeding. So the mother hit him so hard that his nose was bleeding. B. Wordsworth said, "Stop crying and we will go for a walk." So this is the relationship between B. Wordsworth and the boy. The boy gets beaten up at home, and then he comes to the home of B. Wordsworth and he becomes calm because B. Wordsworth loves him and they share a lovely bond. I stopped crying, but I was breathing short. We went for a walk. We walked down St. Clair Avenue to the savannah, and we walked to the race course. He gets thrashed by his mother on reaching home and then runs away to B. Wordsworth's house. It is B. Wordsworth who comforts him and takes him for a walk down St. Clair Avenue to the savannah and then to the race course. B. Wordsworth said, "Now let us lie on the grass and look up at the sky, and I want you to think how far those stars are from us." Wordsworth then suggests lying on the grass and gazing at the night sky. In this way, the two spent time together. They enjoyed each other's company. Some key points which you need to remember. The narrator is quick to detect the coldness with which his mother treats the man. In contrast to her, the narrator does not judge the man and talks to him in a friendly manner. Perhaps this ease of reaching out and communicating with the other enables the narrator to know and understand the life of this interesting lonely man, and he perhaps becomes the only one to do so. Again, the narrator's strict mother serves as a foil to B. Wordsworth's accommodating nature. Wordsworth helps the narrator kid grow and teaches him important lessons about life and leisure. We will discuss this answer in detail later. And then we have the narrator's home and the life that the narrator leads. B. Wordsworth lets the boy discover things by himself, and he teaches the kid to delight in everyday experiences we take for granted, and presents him a fresh pair of eyes with which to observe and soak in the wonders of the natural world. Black Wordsworth calls him the greatest poet in the world and claims that William Wordsworth was his brother. Like his romantic counterpart, who was an acclaimed nature poet, B. Wordsworth loves to spend time with nature, but he is not known by anybody as a poet. he has a marginalized status in the society. First of all, he is a failed poet, and then he is black-skinned. His marginalized status may be attributed to his color, but it is difficult to state whether he actually writes poems at all.